Welcome back, everybody. I am finally utilizing my original plan that I had for about half a year to a year now. This is kind of the original plan I wanted to go with, but I decided to kind of generalize it all on one channel just so I can pump out the content and kind of expand this channel. But I'm going to subcategorize this version of what I wanted from my boxing discussions or whatnot. So, welcome to the first episode of Box Talk. Now, it's not going to be 100% consistent. I am in the process of moving right now. So, for the next couple of days or so, I'm going to try to put my best efforts of getting some content out. But I will be more consistent once I am settled in. I really want to talk about the Bivol versus Better Be trilogy that is in place right now and what took place in order for that to happen. I also want to talk about the New York Times Square bout between Rolly and Ryan Garcia, as well as the other fighters on that card. And I also want to talk about a couple other announcements that are happening this week, as well as what's happening this weekend with the Stanionis and Ennis card. So without further ado, let's get into the first episode. Let's jump straight into it. So the first thing I want to talk about KSI backing out of his match between Dylan Dennis on the unfinished business card, as well as them moving the brawlers and blinders card that they had going on that got moved as well. Now, my take on this, I think KSI may need to retire boxing if he's going to continue to pull out or reschedule his fights, or he needs to pick his fighters wisely. Now, what I mean by that, KSI, he may not have the most fundamental technique when it comes to boxing, but I can say he will not back down in a fight. I do think he can beat good fighters, maybe not ultra professional fighters, but I do think he can beat the likes of Tommy Fury, and he has the work ethic to get to the point to where he could beat Jake Paul. Now the only issue with that is how do you set up for something like that? Dylan Dennis isn't going to be the test for him to prove it. I know there's talks of him fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., which, I mean, that's a great fight, but he lost to Anderson Silva. Now, Anderson Silva, on the other hand, mind you, at that time, he started boxing, and he is a phenomenal fighter. I will never downplay that. But he was an entry-level pro boxer. So, I mean, you can't translate UFC to boxing no matter what you can't translate that. So, either way, it's still going to be a stylistic matchup between JJ and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. But if that doesn't take place, what else is he going to do? What else is the test? And, what is the main goal here? He doesn't want to be a world champion. He doesn't want to continue with being a professional boxer. He just wants to beat Jake Paul. I think that's his end goal. I mean, if I was him, that would be my end goal. But he can't get there. He has had all of his fights pretty much had some type of controversy or pull out to it where he hasn't been able to prove himself at each time the way he's supposed to. So I think he needs to find a fighter who's 100% down, and he also needs to get back with either Leon and Vidal Riley so he can train actual boxing and not at an MMA gym, or find a professional boxer who will train him. I know he has power and status in the UK. He can find a UK boxing coach that will teach him the fundamentals, that will put him into a spot where he will be phenomenal as a boxer. He looked amazing when he was fighting when he had a headgear in the amateur fight he did with Logan Paul. He looked pretty good. Actually, he looked even better with Joe Weller. But other than that, I do think that he is going to do very well in boxing as long as he finds the right matchups. His work ethic is perfectly fine, but I also do think he needs to step away from the sidemen and all the other stuff. All the other music stuff, tours, concerts, sidemen stuff, sidemen charity stuff. He needs to step away from it if he's going to dedicate his time into boxing. We shall see. he has a very high work ethic, very, very admirable. But is it going to translate into his boxing? We shall see. But once we get a focused JJ, we'll have a better JJ. Hopefully he finds his focus into boxing again, because it seems like he's kind of burning out. And maybe Misfits may be on the decline and he needs to step it up as being a promoter, trying to showcase some of these other fighters that he wants to put on the limelight when it comes to fighting on Misfits. And maybe one day I'll be on there, I'm just saying. But other than that, that's all I really have to speak about that. I do think JJ has his place in boxing, and I do think Misfits is here to stay as long as there are perfect, precautions in place. And hopefully we get that KSI and Jake Paul fight. It's bound to happen, I guess. But speaking of Jake Paul, there's supposed to be an announcement. It's supposed to be for the Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor trilogy, which can't wait to see that again. It's going to be held on Netflix. There's going to be some good undercard fights on there as well. I think Alicia Baumgardner is also on that card. But Jake Paul's going to be there. I don't know if he's just going to show face and, promote the other fighters, or he's going to announce his next fight. Now, on Twitter, he did go off on saying to Tommy Fury, hey, I'm going to give you $3 million, fight me. $4 million in the US. Will that happen? We shall see. I would like to see a rematch between those two. I think stylistically, I think they're both very similar. Now, at least, Jake is, still a flat-footed fighter. He's a little lazy with his jab. Tommy is very, disciplined with his jab. He's also very light on his feet. He's very bouncy. But at the same time, they both have power. They both can put people out. I mean, Tommy doesn't have as many knockouts as Jake, but they're both stylistically very strong fighters. But if that announcement doesn't happen, who else is Jake gonna fight? He tried to fight Canelo earlier this year, and that didn't go as planned. Other than that, I really don't see who else he could fight. If he fights Anthony Joshua next year or whatnot, I think he's gonna get murdered. But either way, I do think that Jake Paul is going to fight a couple of times this year. Maybe not KSI. I think that'd probably be like the end-all fight. If Jake loses, I don't think he'll really continue fighting. He has a lot to lose with that fight. If he loses with any other pro boxer, he has nothing to lose because it's a pro boxer, and he can always downplay that he's a YouTuber. But if he loses to a YouTuber like KSI, then that basically negates his whole journey. Basically, Jake has a lot to lose fighting KSI. Now, will that happen? Like I said over and over again, I'm not sure. I want it to happen. We all want it to happen. Next, let's talk about this weekend. We got Stanionis versus Ennis. I didn't actually really get a chance to take a look at the undercard for this event, but I am going to be tuning into it, and more than likely I'll make a breakdown video on all of the fights on this card. Stay tuned for that. Then next, let's talk about the Cinco de Mayo events that's happening next month. Now, that entire weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is going to be jam-packed. We got on Friday, we have the New York Times Square fights between Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia. And then we also got Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez, as well as Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza Jr. That fight card is going to be sick, especially in Times Square. The biggest issue, of course, is going to be the people. New York is massive for its population, and especially around Times Square, it can get really crowded and packed. At first, this event was supposed to be first come, first serve free event, if I'm not mistaken, but I think logistically speaking, it's not going to work out well, especially security-wise. You're probably going to have to hire high top-notch security to watch over this entire fight, because anything could happen. So in order for that, I guess, the security to be as tight and as secure as possible, especially for a first-time event like this in Times Square, they're gonna have to close off all public spectators from this match. Now, With that even being said, there's going to be people watching the event, and there's going to be people invited to the event, so at least there will still be a crowd. I think that is the safest option for these fighters going into this ring in the open in New York. You never know what could happen, and the security has to be top notch. So I think they're going to do a really good job with that. I think this was spoken by Eddie Hearn on Matchroom about, you know, the logistics of this matchup between these fighters and the area and whatnot, how they're going to do it. So they realize like this is going to be a little difficult, so they're going to have to at least, you know, try it out without any public spectators, and just do it invite only. And I think that's the smartest decision that they can do. Saturday we got the Canelo fight, Canelo versus William Skull. Now that fight matchup is going to be pretty good. I think Canelo is going to take the win, of course. I think it's a unification for the super middleweight championship. Now, I mean, it's not really an exciting matchup. It's a Canelo fight. Everyone's going to show up. Everyone's going to have fun. It's a great fight. We're all going to go watch it, you know. But other than that, I didn't really get a chance to look at the undercard for that either. I don't know if there's any fighters announced for the main card and the undercard. I think Munguia is supposed to fight on that card. I know he's been training with Canelo, but other than that, I'm not entirely too sure what's going on with that card. But I'm still gonna peep into it. I'm still gonna watch it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And same, I'm not really too sure about this card either. But on Sunday we have the Inoue versus Cardenas matchup, which I think is also going to be a must watch for fight fans. Inoue, of course, pound for pound boxer, top 3. You know, he's up there. He is a legendary fighter, will be a future Hall of Fame fighter. Now I think this one's also in Vegas as well, which is his return back to America, which he hasn't fought in America in like 2 to 3 years, maybe a little bit more than that. So it's going to be a very exciting matchup as well. But last but not least, I really want to talk about this Bivol fight. Bivol versus Beterbiev trilogy. Let's go. I'm excited for this one. I was excited for the Bivol versus Benavidez mandatory fight that was going to happen, but you know, at the same time, we could have one of the best trilogies in light heavyweight division history, you know. So I'm not too mad about that. But I will say that Benavidez has his chances to fight other massive fighters like Callum Smith. I think he's going to do a good job in the light heavyweight division, especially his David Morrell fight. I thought he did really, really well. There was a little bit of trouble that I think he had during that match. I think it was a really even matchup, and I think David Morrell is supposed to fight once or twice this year as well. I know he's going to be a solid fighter in the division, and he's still kind of green into the division. He has like 9 fights, including Benavidez. Like, bro, he's gonna do amazing in the light heavyweight division. I think he's gonna move up to heavyweight eventually and later in his career, and he's gonna do amazing. I have high hopes for him. But either way, Bivol versus Beterbiev, the trilogy, is going to be one of the most exciting fights this year. And I thought, you know, the card before, the sequel was also an amazing fight, and the entire card was amazing, even though a couple of people had to pull out, like Dubois, as well as Kid Floyd Schofield. But other than that, it was still an amazing card. The trilogy fight card is probably going to be stacked as well. Maybe we'll actually get the Shakur Stevenson versus Schofield fight as well on the trilogy matchup undercard. But you know, I'm actually glad to see it. With that even being said, Bivol had to give up his WBO belt to Benavidez in order to make this trilogy fight happen. So I believe it was the WBO, so don't quote me on that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'll leave a little text to clarify that. But other than that, that's really all I have to speak about. I think all of these matchups are going to be very, very exciting for the next couple of weeks of boxing. I will be trying to report on the Stanionis versus Ennis fight. I know it's this weekend, but you know, I have some things I got going on, so we'll see what happens. But with that being said, this is the first episode of Box Talk. I really appreciate y'all for peeping in. If you made it this far, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.